Welcome to your Ultimate Life podcast, where we help you break free from mediocrity and create a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. Get your free video series at yourultimatelife.ca.
Power is possibility. Today, you're here with the Ultimate Life podcast. And the reason you're here is because you want the ultimate life. You want to create a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. Or maybe you already have that. Or maybe you're spying to see what other podcasts looks like. Who cares? Glad you're here. Grateful to be here with you. And I want to talk about how come power is possibility. The first thing I want to mention is play Monopoly, right? Probably played Monopoly. And when you have a stack of cash at the beginning of the game, you know, there's a certain number you get of all the different bills. That represents potential. And you know, you're going to buy houses, or maybe you're going to pay rent on someone else's house, or you're going to build, develop your houses and put the little green or red houses or hotels on them. But the cash represents possibility. That's the first thing I want you to think about power. Power, sometimes we misunderstand, or we narrowly define power as the ability to make somebody do something. And that's like having power over somebody. Work, corporations used to run a lot like that. Power over someone, boss says, you do that or else. And, you feel like you have to stay late or do whatever it was, no matter what the consequences, because you had this story in your mind that they had power over you. I want to use power in a completely different way. Power is simply the energy and means to get something done. Energy is one thing, means might mean the equipment or the connections or whatever. So having power means that you have the possibility of getting something done. Now, we're all about creating the ultimate life here, purpose, prosperity, and joy. What are your words? My words are purpose, prosperity, and joy. My purpose is to help you realize who you really are, a divine being with infinite capability. Why? To help you change the world with your divine nature, your life experience, your yearning, your capability. I'm here to help you earn all the money you want, create cash. Prosperity is absolutely yours to have. Purpose is yours to enjoy, and joy is a choice. So if you stop and think right now, what is keeping you from the life of your dreams? Like what? Most of the time when I ask people that or some related question, they point to outside stuff. The government did this, or the economy is this, or I lost my job, or I didn't get a raise, or prices are going skyrocketing, and so I can't, whatever, fill in the blank, buy all the food I need, pay my bills, go on vacation. Depends on the level of exigency. And we point to those things as outside. Well, outside things don't determine your emotional state. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Things are going to happen. Things you don't want are unexpected and perhaps are painful in the moment. How long you allow that to happen is up to you. I just had a coaching call earlier today with a longtime client, and that's exactly what we were talking about. He talked about a situation where he'd gotten really upset with something. And the upsetness lasted for an hour or two, and then it was replaced by this individual, chewing himself out, chastising himself for having gotten upset. And so then that further went on, and the cycle went around and around. And so something that could have been a short period of being upset turned into 48 hours. Well, that's multiplying the power of an individual event by 48. That's kind of silly. That's handing control of your life over to externalities, over to other things, other people. That's not a happy way to live. You know it and I know it. So why would we do that? Well, we wouldn't if we're thinking clearly. We wouldn't when we're thinking clearly. So let's talk about creating the outcomes you want. Acknowledging that we don't control anything except our own thoughts and behavior. There's two choices about how to use our power. You can use your power in defense of, or you can use your power in creation of. Now, in defense of is usually, if something's imminently attacking you. I'm not talking about that. Most of the time, we're not faced with a saber-toothed tiger. We're not faced with imminent destruction of any kind. But we have this defensive mindset of trying to ward off all these bad things that are happening around us. They're going to happen no matter what. Instead of in defense of, let's use your power in creation of. in creation of what? Purpose, prosperity, and joy. Now, my initial thesis was power is possibility. If you abdicate your power or throw it away or ignore it or give it up, you limit your possibility. That would be like playing Monopoly and giving all your money away to start with. So you have nothing. When you land on a house, you can't buy it. When you land on someone else's property, you can't pay it. And so your possibility is gone. Living in fear of or in defense of would be, okay, I have this amount of money at the beginning of Monopoly. I'm not going to buy anything because I'm sure I'm going to have to pay somebody rent. I'm going to land on their houses or land on, the different things where I have to pay it. And I better save it so I'll have it for those things that I'm going to have to pay. Well, that's a sure, absolute certain way to lose at Monopoly every single time. Those of you that play know that the way you win Monopoly is to buy properties, get monopolies of the same color, develop them, and then start collecting money from others. If you play defensively, you lose. Period. Every time in every game of Monopoly that ever was played. Life is the same way. If you play your life in defense of, then you're hoarding your power, your creative power, your energy, your vision, your dreams, your yearning. You're hoarding that to ward off evil spirits or evil occurrences or bad things that other people say or do or think, or that you imagine that they do say or think. Well, nobody ever won a Monopoly game that way, and nobody's going to win at life that way, and you're not going to be happy that way, is my prediction. When I lived that way, locked up in other people's stories and living life according to what I thought I was supposed to do, I was miserable all the time. That would be like, all the time. When I began to take control and live it as if the power I held was mine to do with as I chose, I began to create. Now, again, we'll go back to the Monopoly game. And I hope you're familiar with it. And so if you land on properties, you might decide, this street is better than that street or whatever, and you might have a strategy about that. But your idea is to own some properties so you can charge rent to people that land on your squares. And if you don't do that, you don't get any way to increase your revenue except passing go. Do not pass go, only do pass go, collect your $200. That's the fastest way to lose, is to play like saving your money. You have to get aggressive and get in the game. Now, last episode, we talked about getting in the game and what that means and how to stay in the game. So we're going to dig into power today. What is your power? So we've defined power. Power is the ability to cause something to happen. There's physical power, right? I can go move a bag of ice from upstairs to downstairs. Or I can, Joy and I just went to Costco and did a Costco run. And it wasn't a big one, but there were a few bags to put away when we got home. Power was me moving the bags and unloading them on different shelves, right? Another kind of power that's physical power. If you're exercising, physical power is doing your push-ups. If you're learning to play tennis, physical power is running around on the court. I'm thinking of tennis because Wimbledon's on these weeks before and after I'm recording this. Emotional power is the ability to cause some emotional change. Now, in all those examples I gave, I wasn't using my physical power to make anybody else do anything. I was putting away groceries. I was doing push-ups. I was moving ice up and down stairs. The best use of your power is inside you doing your projects, or in collaboration or cooperation with someone, and you're doing it together. The worst use of your power is to do nothing. The next worst use of your power, and it might be a competition as to which is worse, is to try to make somebody else do something. Those are complete wastes of every kind of power, physical, emotional, and spiritual. So what is your power? What is it? What kind of physical power do you use every day? What kind of exercise do you do? What kind of activities do you do? Those are pretty obvious. What kind of emotional power do you have and do you use? Like what are your emotional activities? Do you spend emotional chips or emotional energy or emotional money developing and nurturing relationships? Or do you hoard your emotional money defending against perceived offenses? I have certainly done both. And in creating a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy, I found that intentionally using my emotional power to love and bless others is more rewarding and more fruitful, just like playing Monopoly. So I'll give you an example. Today, I reached out to a person who sent me a friend request on Facebook. And I did what I always do. I looked at the profile to see what they're about, make sure it's not a scam. And it looked like they were a good person doing good stuff in the world. And it looked like we had a bunch of mutual friends. And that gave me an idea where they were from. So I said yes. When I say yes, I always connect. I sent a message. It was a voice message because I like to use those. And I think, guess what? They're more emotionally connecting. And so I said, I looked at your profile. I like this. I like this. Thank you for friending me, that kind of stuff. And again, that's using emotional power to do what? To create a connection and to see what's up. And then I invited them to tell me what made them reach out to connect and what I could do to help them and, just that kind of stuff. But again, I could have just said yes. I could have ignored it. I could have said nothing except said, who are you? What do you want? And that would have been using emotional power, but in a negative way. So what I'm trying to use by this small example is intentionally using the emotional power of connection has invited who knows what in the future. And so what happened was there was few messages back and forth. And the first message was delightful. I hadn't actually looked where this individual was from. They were from a foreign country. And so they answered me back with a voice message. And they're being from another country, the accent was quite pronounced and it was delightful. And they left me a fun message. And then I sent back and we went back and forth a couple of messages. And at the end of the day, they had a bunch of questions. And so I provided a scheduled link. And guess what? I don't know when, but one of these days, that individual will schedule an appointment and we'll get a chance to chat and get better acquainted. All of that was intentional use of emotional power to create a connection, to see how I can add good to the world. Now, I've said before, I don't know, 1,000,000 times at least, my purpose in my purpose, prosperity, and joy, my purpose is to serve, to love you, to serve you, and to create and add joy, add good to the world. That's all I'm doing. One of the ways that I do that is to help people, to help you understand and believe how powerful you are, how much capability you have. Power is possibility is our topic today. If you knew you had power to move mountains, you would act differently than if you believe you don't, if you have no power at all or very limited power. If you knew you had power to create all the wealth you wanted, if you really knew that, you would act differently. You would engage in different activities. You'd have a different amount of commitment and faith. And so understanding and truly grasping your own coolness, your own greatness is a key piece of this. The third piece of power is spiritual power, and that's a little bit related to the other two. But spiritual power is just the cultivation and understanding of our connection to the higher self, to God, to the universe, to your higher self, however you think of that connection. It's real, and you know it, and I know it. We all feel it. Sometimes we ignore it. Sometimes we cuss at it. Sometimes we pray to it, but we all feel it. Now, it's one thing, again, just to feel it. There it is, kind of dormant in the background. I don't understand it. I feel stuff once in a while. Yeah, whatever. What if you had the ability to develop that connection, to tap into that unseen power, divine power, the universe power, God power? What if you knew you could do that? What would you do with that knowledge? See, this is the key. You do have that ability. You're a divine being. You have the ability to develop physical power. You can go to the gym and work out if you want. You have the ability to develop emotional power, emotional intelligence, relationships, to use, methods to develop yourself there. And you have the ability to develop your spiritual power. When you develop these to a high degree, you can create anything you want. That's the whole basis of your ultimate life. You can have the life you dream. You can have the life you imagine. You can have the life you wish. You really can. I didn't used to believe it. I have worked on it now for 15 years, and I enjoy it now. A life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. That's a so what, because you don't care what kind of life I have. You care what kind of life you have. I'm sharing this because I want you to know and internalize your own ability to do this. Talking about our sources of power is one piece of this. So the next piece is, how do you get more power? If power is so available, if that's really true, if you can have all the physical, emotional, and spiritual power, mental power too, if you want to add that in there, if you really can have all of that you want, how do you get more? Well, the obvious one to start with is physical power. If I go regularly through some exercise routine, obviously I can develop that. When I was in my late 30s, about 30 years ago, I made a firm decision that I was going to lose a whole bunch of weight and do it through martial arts. So I enrolled in a nearby dojo, and I went regularly and diligently for 2 or 3 years. And I had done some before, but I finished up earning several belts and got all the way up to a black belt. And, had to go through difficult demonstrations and tests and all the rest. It was a very rigorous school, not one of these sort of everybody wins schools. I broke a few teeth and had a few, dents and bruises on the way. But in the process, I got really limber. I could do the splits and I could break boards, lots of boards, and do all kinds of stuff. So I developed a physical power. It took 3 years of rigorous, intentional, focused activity. 3 years of rigorous, intentional, focused activity, and I was able to develop physical power. Now, emotional power was something I was terrible at. If you know the stories, I had several failed relationships. I didn't know how to be a good partner. I failed miserably at that. So having one kind of power doesn't mean you have another. I didn't put the effort in. I didn't do like I did with the martial arts. I didn't go somewhere to an emotional dojo and learn from a master and do the work and diligently dedicate myself to that at all. I haven't done that until starting in 2007, when my life completely changed. But for all the years before that, from 0 to 52, I didn't know very much about emotional intelligence. I wasn't very good at it. I didn't understand it, and I failed a lot. And a lot of it had to do with depression. I struggled with depression and mental illness and all kinds of stuff. But I didn't do the things that were necessary to develop. I could have. See, I knew what I needed to do to develop physical power, so I did that. I didn't know what I needed to develop emotional power, and so I didn't do it, and I didn't find out. I knew things were broken and weren't working well. It was obvious in my life, which in many areas was a mess, but I didn't go develop that power. I could have gone to get more of that power, and it would have been exactly the same. Find the right place. It was really important in the dojo, for example, that it was close to the house. So it's 5 minutes away. So I never had any excuse not to go to class. And that worked. It helped. I could easily have gone to see counselors or other, professionals to get help. But there was a stigma around that. You don't admit that you're broken. You don't admit that you need help. You're just supposed to suck it up. I could have ignored that too. That's just external pressure. That's just externalities. You, me, we don't have to give in to that. Why is the story the master? Why is the story about that stuff the ruler? As long as I allowed that story to be my ruler, I failed. I struggled. I suffered. I suspect that you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you can pinpoint 2 or 3 areas right this minute in your life where you're not developing like you want to. And maybe it's fear, maybe it's the stigma, maybe it is a belief that you can't, or that somehow you're disabled or permanently, incapable. That is never true. We can always make progress. Now, one person's going to make progress at a different rate than another. That happened in the martial arts school. Some people moved forward faster than others. Some people's bodies responded differently to the exercises. It would be the same for anything. The problem wasn't that I couldn't do that emotional development. I didn't have the courage to go find the help I needed. I knew my relationships were struggling. I knew there were problems all over the place, but I didn't have the courage. I was afraid to go get the help I needed, and the very predictable happened. I didn't develop that power. Spiritual power, how do you get more? It's exactly the same thing. There are tools and processes to develop intuition, meditation, spiritual power and connection, and it's just as real as the ability to break boards. Absolutely just as real, just as meaningful, and just as accessible. When you learn the motions and techniques for breaking things in martial arts, you know them. It's not like sometimes you know them and sometimes you don't. Often we treat spiritual things like they're off and on. Well, sometimes I do it and sometimes I don't. Nonsense. That just means you haven't put in the reps, haven't put in the work. It is emotional and spiritual power can be developed just like physical power. It's exactly the same. The benefits. So the last part I want to talk about is, okay, now we understand what it is. I ask you to identify your power and where you are on your development of spiritual, physical, emotional, mental power. I didn't mention mental, but I developed my mental power by reading a lot and by engaging in conversations at masterminds and places that are stimulating and challenging. I get interviewed a lot. I interview a lot of people. I do a lot of things that intentionally develop and stimulate my mind. And that's how I develop that power. So what? So now I've talked about what power is, how to get it, etc. What can you do with it? Well, the physical stuff's obvious. The Olympics are starting here pretty quick, and we're going to see awesome demonstrations of power, awesome demonstrations of focus, learning, and physical prowess, an amazing skill on the world stage at the very highest level by athletes of all kinds, doing all kinds of sports. And of course, that involves staggering mental discipline too. So what you can do with physical power is confidence. You can feel good about how you look, how you feel. You can have the energy you want. You can have the stamina you need to get through things. Your physical abilities and how, the shape you're in has a lot to do with your emotional and your creative capability. So what can you do with physical power? The answer is clear. I've just given you some examples. The question for you is, are you willing to do the work to spend the 3 years at whatever your imaginary dojo is to get the physical power you want? This is not an indictment. It's just a question. Because if you don't, you won't have it. The next question is, what can you do with emotional power? Well, again, I'm going to give you an example. I failed at 3 relationships. I was a disaster. I did not know how to be honest. I did not know how to be open and vulnerable. I had misconceptions about every facet of being in a relationship, of, depending on people and letting them depend on me and being trustworthy and telling the truth and, all the stuff that's just foundational. I didn't know how to do any of that. I certainly hadn't learned it in my upbringing, and I'd never thought about, honestly, making the work, finding out what I had to do to develop that. I just sort of stumbled along and failed a lot. Today, I have intentionally got the help, read the books, talked to the experts, used a lot of coaching and shrinks and everything else. Why? Because I wanted to develop that power. Now, the result of that is I have now a 17-year relationship that is going to be another 17 million years. I love every second of it. It breathes life and energy into my soul every day. And you know what? It's because I and my partner, we have developed our emotional power and the desire to be together in emotional power, to love, to serve, to bless, to lift each other. That's the benefit of that. It also allows you to weather the storms of life. Early in our relationship 17 years ago, some leftover stuff from my past caught up to me, and I had my bank accounts drained by the IRS, 0. That was a test of our relationship. Imagine coming home and saying, yeah, all that money we thought we had, there's not one single cent. What? So emotional power gives you the ability to weather those kinds of storms, which we did and still do. Not that one, but other ones, right? So let's talk for last about spiritual power. What can you do with it? I don't know what you're going to do with your spiritual power. The spiritual relationship I have developed with the divine means intuition regularly, trusting intuition, recognizing it, having absolute confidence that I can do and am doing the right thing, and no second guessing. Do you know how much time that saves? And anxiety and worry and acid indigestion and all the rest? Developing your relationship with your higher self or with the divine, with the universe. For me, it's God. I'm a Christian, so I believe in, God and Son, Jesus Christ. But whatever the divine appellation, name that you have, it's there and you know it. Developing your ability to hear it on demand, to trust it, and to be confident is so powerful. It means you never have to worry. Even when things go south. I'm not saying that because you have good intuition that you're never going to go south. Things aren't going to blow up in your face. Happens all the time. You know what the cool thing is? I don't care. You don't have to be overwhelmed by those things. Being destroyed, overwhelmed, derailed, knocked off the wagon when stuff happens is optional. The key to having that is to develop your spiritual power or your connection to the divine. Today, we've talked about spiritual, physical, emotional, and mental power. The benefits of developing mental power are unlimited. I love reading about all kinds of subjects, and I get to have really interesting conversations with all kinds of people because of that. And so my mind is continually stimulated, and I get to provide that for other folks. If you mesh all that together, it means I get to live the ultimate life. I have absolute clarity of purpose. 250 million people this year to help you see how great you are and then help you create from your infinite possibilities so you can change the world. I'm about changing the world, upgrading consciousness, helping people have more hope and success and confidence in themselves and love for each other. That's all I do. It's a wonderful business. It's a wonderful place and time to be. Prosperity means, of course, money. It also means prosperity in relationships and all the rest. I have that. And joy is a choice. And then, of course, I get to be married to joy. So the benefits, the name of this episode is Power is Possibility. Power, physical power. You know what the weakest one of all mine are? Those 4? My physical self. I'm 68, be 69 in December. And, 2018, I died. My lungs were trashed. Got ear problems, eye problems. I'm limping these days, arthritis, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm in physical therapy and working on all those things as hard as I can. But they're responding the least to all of these things. So the one that sort of seems like the easiest for me is, right this minute at least, the most difficult. But my point is, if you develop on purpose, you get the help and do the work to develop your physical power, which is physical possibility, emotional possibility or power, spiritual possibility or power, mental possibility or power. You can create anything you want. You will have the tools to get that done. My work from this moment until the last breath I draw in this world is to help, to be of service, to share the journey I've been on, and to encourage and help you on yours. That's all I do, and I love it. You are amazing. You are divine. I love you. As a divine being, I'm in awe of everything that you've done and that you're setting about to do. I love getting to know people. I'd love to connect. If you're interested, reach out and let's talk. I'd love to get to know you, what you do, what you're about, what you're creating in the world, and what your goals and missions are. Love to know that. Most of all, you're invited to share your story with me and perhaps with listeners if you'd like. We can't have enough success. We can't have enough encouragement. There's enough darkness and discouragement in the world. All the good stuff we can muster is needed, it's called for, and I am a megaphone. My podcasts and platforms are a megaphone to help you share your story and message as you create and live your ultimate life.
Open your heart and this time around, stand.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We hope that you take it deeply into your heart and decide for yourself how you can create anything you desire. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends. As always, we'd love to hear your feedback and topic suggestions. Until tomorrow, this is Your Ultimate Life with host Kellen Flukiger.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your feet on